the impossible city, and God's unusual promise. Jericho was not just another city, it was ancient, it was fortified, and it was designed to never fall. Long before Joshua and the Israelites ever approached its gates, Jericho had already earned a reputation that struck fear into surrounding nations. Massive stone walls rose high above the plains, walls so thick that homes were built directly into them. Watchtowers lined the ramparts. Armed guards stood vigilant day and night. Every gate was sealed, reinforced, and protected. Jericho did not rely on chance. It relied on strength. For generations, it had withstood invasion, siege, and attack. And now, it stood directly in Israel's path like a final barrier between promise and fulfillment. After 40 long years in the wilderness, Israel had finally crossed the Jordan River. The impossible had already begun to happen. The waters had parted. The people had walked through on dry ground. Hope was rising. But then they saw Jericho, and hope collided with reality. From a military perspective, attacking Jericho made no sense. Israel had no siege towers, no battering rams, no experience fighting fortified cities. They were former slaves, wanderers, pilgrims, not conquerors. And yet, this was the first place God led them. Joshua understood the stakes immediately. If Jericho could not be taken, the momentum would die, confidence would crumble, fear would spread through the camp like fire. And Joshua, now carrying the mantle Moses once bore, felt the weight pressing heavily on his spirit. One evening, as Joshua stood near Jericho, staring up at its walls, something extraordinary happened. A man suddenly appeared before him, standing with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua approached cautiously and demanded, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" The answer cut through the air. "Neither," the man replied, "but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come." In that moment, Joshua fell face down to the ground. This was no ordinary warrior. This was no human commander. This was a divine encounter. And then came the words that changed everything. God said to Joshua, "See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men." Pause for a moment. The walls were still standing. The gates were still closed. The soldiers were still watching from above. Yet God spoke as though it was already done. "I have delivered Jericho into your hands." Victory was declared before the battle even began. If this story is drawing you in, gently tap the like button. It helps this message reach others who may need it. Then came the instructions, and this is where human logic completely breaks down. God did not tell Joshua to sharpen swords. He did not command an ambush. He did not outline a military assault. Instead, God revealed a plan that sounded almost absurd. The people were to march around the city once each day for 6 days. Armed men would lead. Priests would carry the Ark of the Covenant. 7 priests would blow trumpets made from ram's horns. And above all else, the people were to remain silent. No shouting, no conversation, no battle cries, just footsteps and trumpets. On the 7th day, they would march around the city 7 times. After the final trumpet blast, Joshua would command the people to shout, and then the walls would fall. Imagine standing there. Imagine hearing this plan. Imagine trying to believe it, marching around an unconquerable city in silence for 6 days. This was not strategy. This was obedience, and faith always begins where understanding ends. As the first day began, the gates of Jericho remained sealed. Soldiers stared down from above. Citizens whispered and mocked from the walls, and below them, Israel walked quietly. 1 day passed. Nothing happened, then another, still nothing. But God had already spoken, and the seventh day was coming. 6 days of silence and the tension. Before the fall, day after day, Israel marched around the city, along the same dusty path, under the same unforgiving sun. The priests blew their trumpets. The Ark of the Covenant moved steadily forward. Armed men walked ahead and behind, and the people remained silent. From the walls of Jericho, confusion slowly turned into mockery. What kind of army is this? Where are their weapons? Do they think walking will defeat us? But inside the Israelite camp, something far deeper was happening. Silence has power. Silence strips away distraction. Silence exposes doubt. Silence tests obedience. With every step, the people were forced to confront their thoughts. Why are we doing this? Is God really going to act? What if nothing happens? And yet, they kept walking. Because obedience is not about understanding, it's about trust. Nothing visible was changing. The walls did not crack. The gates did not shake. The guards did not retreat. And still, God had already spoken. By the fourth and fifth days, the routine must have felt heavy, repetitive, almost humiliating. Human logic would have screamed, "This isn't working." But faith does not ask whether something appears to work. Faith asks whether God commanded it. Then came the seventh day. Joshua rose early. The air felt different. There was urgency, anticipation, expectation. The people assembled. The priests lifted the ark. The trumpets were raised, and they began to march. Once, twice, 3 times. With every lap, the tension tightened. 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. The people of Jericho were no longer laughing. Something was happening. Then came the 7th time. The priests released a long, sustained trumpet blast. Joshua lifted his voice and shouted, "Shout! For the Lord has given you the city." The silence shattered. Thousands of voices rose together, not in fear, but in faith. Stay with me, because what happens next reveals why this moment was never accidental. The ground trembled, stone cracked, foundations collapsed. Walls that had stood for centuries fell, straight down, not outward, not chaotically. They collapsed in place. Paths opened where walls once stood. Israel didn't climb rubble. They walked straight in. This was not confusion. This was divine precision. What really happened and why Jericho still matters today. So what really happened at Jericho? This was not sound overpowering stone. This was obedience releasing divine power. Centuries later, archaeological discoveries revealed collapsed walls at Jericho, bricks piled neatly at the base of the city, exactly as described in Scripture. But Jericho was never meant to be just an archaeological discussion. It was a spiritual lesson. God did not need Israel's strength. He wanted their trust. The walls did not fall because Israel shouted loudly. They fell because God had already gone before them. Before the first step, before the first trumpet, before the final shout, the victory was already settled. Jericho teaches us something uncomfortable. God often works silently before he works suddenly, and that matters today, because we all face walls, walls of fear, walls of delay, walls of uncertainty, walls that refuse to move, no matter how much effort we apply. We want immediate breakthroughs, but God often asks for daily obedience instead. The marching days mattered just as much as the miracle moment, because faith is formed in waiting. Maybe the real question isn't, why hasn't my wall fallen yet? Maybe the question is, am I still willing to walk? Because sometimes God asks us to walk when we want to fight, to trust when we want proof, to obey when we want answers. Jericho fell not because Israel was powerful, but because God was faithful. If this message encouraged you, subscribe for more Bible stories told with depth, mystery, and truth. And comment below, what wall are you believing God to bring down? Because the same God who brought down Jericho is still moving today.